My name is Lena Whitaker. I was 30 years old when I finally understood that silence could be louder than rejection. I didn't grow up believing family was optional. In our house, family was gravity. You didn't escape it, you orbited it through obligation, comparison, and guilt dressed up as concern. You showed up, you smiled, you accepted your role. Mine was simple. I was the afterthought. My older brother Caleb was 4 years ahead of me, and light years ahead in my parents' eyes. From the moment he learned to walk, he was destined for greatness, literally. He had that kind of blonde hair that caught sunlight and compliments. My dark hair was described as practical. Even our childhood photos told the story. Caleb in the center, me cropped slightly to the side. Caleb played varsity baseball. I built websites in my bedroom. Caleb dated the prom queen. I dated my laptop. Caleb went to a top university for finance. I went to community college for computer science, on loans I'm still paying off. And yet, I tried. I tried so hard. When I was 16, I entered a national coding competition. 4 months of late nights, barely sleeping, living on instant noodles and ambition. I placed third out of over 5,000 entries. My dad's response? Well, at least you gave it your best shot. 2 months later, Caleb placed fifth in a regional tennis tournament. Dad bought him a brand new MacBook. I told myself I wasn't bitter, that comparison was childish, that love showed up in different ways. That lie lasted until 3 days after my 30th birthday. I was sitting in my 450 square foot studio apartment in Austin, eating leftover enchiladas for breakfast, because adulthood is mostly improvisation. The AC worked, most days. The furniture was secondhand. The dreams were rearranging themselves. My phone rang. Mom. Lena, sweetheart, we need to talk. That tone. The one she used when she was about to tell me something I was expected to accept with grace and gratitude. What's up, Mom? Well, your father and I have been talking, and we've decided to help Caleb with a down payment on a house. I waited. There had to be more. There isn't. How much are we talking about? There was a pause. Just long enough to prepare me for damage. $300,000. I nearly dropped my phone into my enchiladas, which would have been tragic because that was also lunch and dinner. $300,000? Yes, we want to help our children succeed. Children. Plural in theory, singular in practice. So, I said carefully, you're giving Caleb $300,000 for a house. Yes. And for me? Silence. Not awkward silence. Not apologetic silence. Calculated silence. Lena, Mom finally said, you're in a very different place in your life. There it was. You've made different choices. Caleb has a stable career, a serious relationship, a plan. You're still finding yourself. Finding myself at 30. After a decade of grinding, freelancing, surviving. I understand, I said, because I always did. You've always been so independent, she added, like it was a compliment. Independent. The polite word for neglected. 4 months later, at Sunday brunch, the weekly performance of Functional Family, Caleb announced he was house hunting. We're looking in Westlake, he said casually, passing the bacon like success was transferable. Dad perked up instantly. How much are houses running out there? About $1 million. We'd need around $300,000 down to avoid PMI. I watched my parents exchange that look, the one where entire decisions are made without words. What if we helped? Dad said. Caleb smiled like Christmas came early. You're not asking, Dad continued. We're offering. Mom glanced at me. Guilt flickered, then disappeared. When you're ready to settle down, Lena, she said. I smiled. I'm good. I wasn't. But I was done explaining. 3 days after my birthday, Mom called again. We're having a celebration dinner this Sunday. Caleb's closing on the house. You'll come, won't you? A celebration. For him. With my absence wrapped in politeness. I have plans, I lied. Oh, what are you doing? Meeting friends. She sounded disappointed for exactly half a second. Well, maybe birthday dinner next week. We both knew next week would never come. After we hung up, I sat there in my tiny apartment and let the truth settle. 30 years old, negative net worth. A family that remembered me when it was convenient, and something shifted. Not dramatically. No music, no montage, just clarity. I was done trying to earn love that came with conditions. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to send a message. I was just going to stop. The first week after I stopped calling my parents felt wrong. Not painful, not dramatic, just off. I'd be halfway through my day and suddenly feel that reflex, the instinct to text my mom something meaningless. A photo of a dog I'd passed on the street, a dumb comment about the weather. Muscle memory built from 30 years of trying to stay connected to people who rarely reached back. I caught myself hovering over my phone more than once. Then I didn't send anything. By the end of the first week, something uncomfortable dawned on me. They hadn't noticed. No, are you okay? No, we haven't heard from you. No missed calls, no check-ins, silence. The second week made it worse because that silence didn't feel accidental anymore. It felt normal. Like this was always how it worked. Me initiating, me filling gaps, me making sure the relationship existed. Without my effort, there was nothing. Caleb texted once. You good? 2 words. No punctuation. No follow-up. I stared at the message for a full minute before replying. Yeah, busy with work. Congrats on the house. He sent back a thumbs up emoji. That was it. That was the sum total of my family noticing my disappearance. Sunday brunch came and went without me. I imagined them sitting at the table, Caleb talking about mortgage rates and granite countertops, my empty chair chalked up to, Lena's busy. Which was true. I was busy. Busy realizing how little space I'd taken up in their lives. Here's the part nobody tells you about going quiet with your family. The hardest part isn't missing them. It's realizing how little you actually do. I'd expected grief, some dramatic ache, a sense of loss. Instead, I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks for years and finally set it down, only to realize I never needed it in the first place. That freedom didn't pay rent, though. My 450 square foot studio was still small, still expensive, still filled with furniture I'd bought because it was cheap, not because I liked it. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I worked. Not the casual, optimistic freelancing I'd been doing before. This was something else. Focused. Almost angry. The kind of energy that comes from having nowhere else to put your emotions. I said yes to every project, even the bad ones. Websites for local businesses that didn't know what branding was. Landing pages for startups that never launched. Apps designed entirely in someone's head with no budget and impossible deadlines. I stopped undercharging, just a little at first, then more. The turning point came from a job I almost didn't take. A small craft brewery outside Austin reached out, asking for a website redesign. Nothing fancy, just something that didn't look like it had been built in 2009 by someone's nephew. The owner, Mark, was one of those men who'd escaped corporate life and now made artisanal beer with names like Rusted Pine IPA. Passionate. Vague. I want it to feel authentic, he said during our first call, but also modern and rustic and clean and bold and subtle. Translation: I don't know what I want, but I'll know it's wrong when I see it. We went through 18 revisions. 18. By the 19th, something in me snapped, but in a good way. I stripped everything back. Clean typography, negative space, no gimmicks, no trying to impress, just honesty. I sent it at 11:47 p.m. and didn't expect to hear back for days. Mark called me 12 minutes later. Lena, he said, voice thick with excitement. This is it. This is exactly it. I smiled, alone in my apartment. How much do I owe you? I'd quoted him $1,200 originally, which was already too low. Something made me pause. $1,800. I waited for him to argue. Done, he said immediately. And listen, I'm opening a second location next year. Would you be interested in doing the full digital package? Website, social templates, email campaigns? My heart started racing. I could probably fit that in. Great. I'm thinking around $22,000 for the whole thing. Does that work? I had to sit down. Yeah, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. That works. When the call ended, I stared at the wall. $22,000 for work I enjoyed, for someone who valued it. It felt like validation and revenge wrapped into one. That project led to another, then 3 more. Words spread quietly, the good kind of quiet, the kind built on competence, not bragging. Within 8 months, I doubled my income. I wasn't rich, but I was breathing. I stopped checking my bank account before buying groceries. Moved out of my shoebox studio into a 1-bedroom apartment with actual doors. Bought a couch that wasn't from Facebook Marketplace. By month 10, something even stranger happened. I woke up content, not euphoric, not triumphant, just okay. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. I started going to the gym, not out of self-loathing, but because it helped. Because moving my body made me feel grounded. Spite, it turns out, is an excellent pre-workout. Around month 11, I met Ethan at a coffee shop. He was sitting at the table next to mine, equally frustrated with the Wi-Fi, muttering under his breath while refreshing a loading screen. We bonded over it, then over freelancing, then over the shared exhaustion of building something alone. He worked in operations consulting. Calm, observant, the opposite of chaotic. We started working together at coffee shops, then libraries, then each other's apartments. It wasn't romantic at first, just easy. One night, while we were both working late at his place, Ethan looked up from his laptop and said quietly, "I really like you. You know that, right?" I froze. Years of emotional neglect don't exactly prepare you for direct affection. He smiled when I didn't respond. "You don't have to say anything," he added. "I just wanted you to know." 2 weeks later, we were dating. And for the first time, I wasn't explaining myself. Being with Ethan felt unfamiliar in the best possible way. There was no guessing, no decoding tone or reading between lines. If he cared, he said it. If something bothered him, he brought it up calmly instead of letting it fester. It took me a while to trust that. Years of being overlooked had trained me to expect affection to be conditional, earned through achievement, performance, usefulness. With Ethan, there was no scoreboard, no comparison, no invisible sibling always winning. That alone felt revolutionary. We settled into something steady. Mornings that started with coffee and quiet, evenings that didn't require small talk to feel connected. He never asked why I didn't talk about my family much. He noticed, but he waited. The night I finally told him everything happened almost by accident. We were lying on his couch, laptops closed, the glow from the city bleeding through the windows. He mentioned his parents in passing, something about a weekly call he'd put off. "You should probably call them," I said reflexively. He studied me for a moment. "You don't talk to yours much, do you?" There it was. I exhaled slowly. They gave my brother $300,000 for a house. He didn't interrupt. And they gave me explanations about why I didn't need help, about why I should understand. I told him about the birthday phone call, the celebration dinner, the years of being the afterthought, the way silence had become easier than trying to belong. When I finished, he didn't rush to soften it. "That's messed up," he said simply. Just that. No excuses. No, "I'm sure they meant well." No, "Parents are complicated." Just validation. It hit harder than I expected. I thought maybe I was being dramatic, I admitted, or ungrateful. He shook his head. "You were hurt. There's a difference." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until my chest tightened. A year passed without contact. A full year. No holidays, no birthdays, no updates. And strangely, life kept going. Better than before. Then, on a hungover Sunday morning, my phone rang. "Mom." I stared at the screen like it was a live wire. Ethan noticed immediately. "You don't have to answer that." I know, I said. I just want to see what she says. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, I listened. Lena, sweetheart, we haven't heard from you in so long. Your father and I are worried. Caleb's worried too. Please call us back. We miss you. We miss you. After a year, I deleted the voicemail. What did she say? Ethan asked. That they miss me. Do you believe her? I thought about it longer than I expected. Did my mother miss me? Maybe in the abstract. Like you miss a piece of furniture after rearranging a room. You notice the empty space, but you don't rush to put it back. No, I said finally. I don't think I do. Then you don't owe her a response. 2 weeks later, Caleb called. This time, I answered. Lena, what's going on? He asked. Mom and Dad are freaking out. I've been busy. For a year. Silence. Is this about the house thing? He asked. Because I told them they should have helped you too. That surprised me. You did? Of course. You're my sister. But you know how they are. So you still took the money. What was I supposed to do? He snapped. Turn down $300,000 on principal? Fair point. I just want things to go back to normal, he added. Just call Mom, okay? Normal. For him. After the call ended, I felt the familiar guilt creeping back, the training kicking in. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe silence was cruel. Ethan found me staring at my phone. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they suddenly remembered you exist, he said gently. I didn't call back. Instead, I kept building. By month 20, I had something I never thought I'd have. Savings. Enough to dream. And that's when everything changed. I didn't set out to buy land. That's the part people always assume, that there was some grand plan, a long-term vision board with photos of cabins and sunsets pinned neatly in the corner. There wasn't. There was just a restlessness I couldn't shake, and a growing sense that if I didn't build something tangible soon, I might implode from all the things I'd held in for too long. The idea started quietly, late at night, scrolling through listings I couldn't afford. Not houses. That felt like too much. Too close to my parents. Too similar to what they'd funded for Caleb. I didn't want a comparison. I wanted separation. Land felt different. Raw. Undefined. Unclaimed. A place where no one had decided what success was supposed to look like yet. Ethan and I had been dating about 8 months when we took a spontaneous weekend trip to the hill country. One of those impulsive decisions made after a long work week where you wake up on Saturday and realize your walls are closing in. We packed light, hiking shoes, bad coffee, no itinerary. The hike itself was forgettable, hot, dry, more dust than scenery. But on the drive back, we took a wrong turn, then another. GPS lost signal. Ethan tried to stay optimistic while unfolding an actual paper map like we were living in a different decade. I think we're lost, he said. We're not lost, I replied automatically. We're exploring. We passed the same abandoned gas station twice. Then we rounded a bend, and I saw it. 7 acres of overgrown land, framed by cedar trees and massive live oaks. A narrow creek cut through the back, glinting in the afternoon sun. The view opened wide, quiet and expansive in a way that made my chest ache. A hand-painted sign leaned crookedly near what might have once been a driveway. For sale. I pulled over without thinking. What are you doing? Ethan asked. I just want to look. Lena, this is how horror movies start. I was already out of the car. Up close, it was even better. Quiet in a way the city never was. Not empty, alive. Birds, wind, water. I stood there and felt something shift inside me. Possibility. The phone number on the sign was faded, but I took a photo anyway. You're serious, Ethan said when I got back to the car. Probably not, I replied. I can't afford it. You should call anyway. I did. The next day, hungover and still smelling like campfire smoke, I called the number. The owner's name was Dale. His voice was rough, tired, 70s, maybe older. You interested in the land, he asked. How much are you asking? $65,000. I had to sit down. $65,000 for 7 acres. Less than a quarter of what my parents had handed Caleb. I had $48,000 in savings. Every dollar earned the hard way. No gifts, no safety net. Would you take 55? I asked, bracing for laughter. Can't, he said simply. That's what I need. I thanked him and hung up. $10,000 short might as well have been $1 million, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I looked at the photos obsessively, imagined what I could build there. Not a house, not yet, just something. Proof that I was capable of owning space in the world. Ethan noticed. You really want this, he said one night. I can't afford it. What if I helped? I looked at him sharply. No. I have some savings, he continued calmly. Not $300,000, but enough. That's your money. So? We haven't been together that long. He shrugged. Long enough to talk about moving in together. Long enough to plan. Fear crept in. Old fear. What if we don't work out? Then we do this like adults, he said. Lawyers, paperwork, protect both of us. He paused. You've spent your whole life being punished for wanting something. Don't do that to yourself. He wasn't wrong. We called Dale back, offered $60,000, all we could manage together. He took 4 days to decide, 4 sleepless nights. Then he agreed. The paperwork took 3 months. Surveys, inspections, documents that made my hand cramp from signing my name. We split ownership proportionally. 55% mine, 45% his. Clean, clear, unromantic, and safe. On closing day, Dale handed me the original for sale sign. You earned it, he said. And just like that, I owned land. Not because someone gave it to me, because I chose it. Owning the land didn't feel real at first. For weeks, it existed only as a line item on a document and a location pin saved in my phone. 7 acres of dirt, trees, and unrealized intention. Every time Ethan and I drove out there, it still felt borrowed, like someone might come along and tell us there'd been a mistake, but no one did. So we started showing up. At first, it was just cleanup. Weekends spent clearing cedar, hauling out old fencing, dragging rusted junk left behind by people who never finished what they started. The work was brutal in a way my office-bound body wasn't prepared for. My hands blistered, my shoulders burned. I went home sore in places I didn't know existed. And yet, every Sunday night, exhausted and filthy, I slept better than I had in years. There was something deeply satisfying about work that left evidence. I started sketching ideas late at night. Not a house. That felt too big, too close to expectation. I wanted something modest, intentional. A place that didn't need to impress anyone. A cabin. Small, efficient. Just enough. I shared the sketches with Ethan, expecting him to hesitate. Instead, he leaned over my shoulder, pointing at the drawings. What if we rotated this, he suggested. Catch the sunset. I blinked. He wasn't just supporting the idea, he was invested in it. The project grew legs faster than I expected. One of my freelance clients, Noah, was a young architect specializing in sustainable design. Over coffee one afternoon, I casually mentioned the land. His eyes lit up. What if we make it a showcase project, he said. I design it, you handle the digital branding for my firm. We document the build, use it for both our portfolios. I laughed. I can't afford anything fancy. Noah shook his head. Who said anything about fancy? Smart is better. We sat there, sketching ideas on napkins. By the end of the week, we had a plan. A 750 square foot cabin, loft bedroom, open living space, composting toilet, rainwater collection, solar panels, not because I was trying to save the planet, but because running utilities to the property would have cost more than the build itself. Total projected budget, $95,000. Seeing the number written down made my stomach twist. I had about $22,000 saved beyond what I'd put into the land. Ethan added another $15,000. The rest came from a small construction loan with an interest rate that made me feel slightly nauseous, but it was doable. Barely. We broke ground in spring. I hired professionals for the things I couldn't fake. Foundation, framing, electrical. Everything else I learned as I went. Nights, weekends, YouTube tutorials paused mid-sentence while I stared at walls, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. I made mistakes. Expensive ones. Cut wood wrong. Misjudged measurements. Installed something twice because the first time was bad. There were moments I stood alone on the property, hands on my hips, wondering who I thought I was. The voice in my head sounded a lot like my father. This is beyond you. You're not built for this. You should have chosen something safer. Then I'd remember sitting in my apartment on my 30th birthday, eating cold food while my parents celebrated my brother, and I'd keep going. Friends started showing up. Mark, the brewery owner, brought a few of his employees one Saturday. Guys who knew their way around tools and didn't ask many questions. They worked for beer and barbecue, laughing while they helped me hoist beams into place. Ethan was there every weekend, sanding, painting, measuring twice because he knew I wouldn't. He never made it about sacrifice, never made me feel like I owed him. By late summer, the structure stood. Walls, roof, windows catching light in a way that made the whole place glow. I walked through it alone one evening, dirt crunching under my boots, and felt my throat tighten. By fall, it was finished. Simple, clean, quiet, not perfect, but honest. Noah photographed it for his portfolio. The images were stunning. Golden hour light filtering through live oaks, the cabin framed like something out of a design magazine. On impulse, I posted one photo online. No context, no explanation. Caption: built this, proud of it. Within an hour, it had more likes than anything I'd ever shared. By the next day, a local design blog reached out, then another, then a client asking if I'd be interested in consulting on a similar project. I didn't tell my family. I didn't need to. 2 years had passed since I stopped calling them. 2 years since I stopped asking for space at a table that never had room for me. I thought the story might end there, quietly. I was wrong. Because somewhere across town, my brother was about to take the same wrong turn Ethan and I had taken months earlier, and he was about to see everything. I was inside the cabin when it happened, installing a light fixture, balanced on a ladder I didn't fully trust, muttering to myself about wiring diagrams, when I heard tires on gravel. That alone was strange. The road out here wasn't exactly a destination. You didn't stumble onto it unless you were lost or looking for something specific. I climbed down, wiped my hands on my jeans, and stepped outside. That's when I saw him. Caleb stood at the edge of the driveway, phone pressed to his ear, staring at my cabin like it had just landed from another planet. His mouth was slightly open, his body completely still. I heard his voice carry across the space between us. "You need to see this right now," he said sharply into the phone. "I'm serious. I'm standing in front of it." He turned, and our eyes met. There it was, the exact moment he realized the story he'd been telling himself for years was wrong. "I'll call you back," he muttered, hanging up. "Hey, Caleb," I said calmly. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. I looked at the cabin, the solar panels catching sunlight, the porch Ethan and I had built, plank by plank, the place I'd earned. "This," I said, "is mine." He laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "No, seriously, I am serious." He walked closer, circling the structure slowly, like it might disappear if he blinked. "You built this?" he asked finally. "Yes." "How?" His voice cracked. "You were broke, living in that shoebox apartment. You were barely scraping by." "That was 2 years ago. But Mom and Dad gave me $300,000, he said, almost accusingly. "You had nothing." I felt something cold and steady settle in my chest. "Turns out," I said, "when you stop spending all your energy trying to prove your worth to people who don't want to see it, you can actually build something." His face hardened. "That's not fair." "When's the last time they asked about my work?" I asked. "My life." He didn't answer. "I bought this land for $60,000, I continued. "Built the cabin for $95,000. Did most of the work myself." He stopped walking. "You did all this alone?" "Not alone," Ethan said gently, stepping out onto the porch behind me. Caleb turned, startled. "This is Ethan," I said, "my boyfriend." They shook hands awkwardly. Caleb looked back at the cabin, then at me. You bought property together. We planned it, legally, responsibly. He swallowed. I'm calling Dad, he said suddenly, pulling out his phone. Don't, I warned. He was already dialing. 38 minutes later, my parents' truck pulled up. Mom got out first, confusion written across her face. Dad followed, slow and careful, eyes scanning the property. Lena, Mom said, voice unsteady, what is this? My home. Dad didn't speak at first. He walked toward the cabin, examining it closely. The panels, the design, the craftsmanship. You built this, he said finally. Not a question. Yes. With what money? There it was. Not, I'm proud of you. Not, you did well. Just how did you do this without us? I earned it, I said. Saved, worked, built it. But we thought you were struggling, Mom said softly. I was, I replied. And you didn't notice? Dad was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, we gave Caleb $300,000. Caleb shifted uncomfortably. And Lena built this for less than half of that. Something changed in his voice. Not admiration. Regret. I was wrong about you, Dad said, about what success looks like. The moment I'd imagined for years finally arrived, and it felt small. You should have called us back, Mom said. Were you worried, I asked, or just uncomfortable with the silence? She flinched. That's cruel. So was forgetting my birthday, I said evenly. So was treating me like a problem instead of a daughter. Silence. I don't need your approval, I continued. I don't need your money. I'm good. So what now? Caleb asked. You just cut us off forever? Maybe, I said. Or maybe we start over, without favorites, without comparisons. Dad cleared his throat. Can we see inside? I looked at Ethan. He nodded. Yes, I said. You can see it. As I opened the door, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, reconciliation or distance, I would never be invisible again. Walking my parents through the cabin felt surreal, not because of the space itself, though it was still strange seeing them inside something I'd built with my own hands, but because of the silence. The kind that settles in when people are forced to reevaluate a story they've been telling themselves for decades. Mom ran her fingers along the edge of the kitchen counter. The wood was smooth, finished carefully, every corner measured twice because I'd learned the hard way what happened when you didn't. You did all this? She asked again, quieter now. Yes. Dad moved slowly, inspecting the walls, the ceiling, the loft ladder. He stopped at the solar monitor mounted near the door. This runs the whole place? It does. He nodded, impressed despite himself. Caleb stayed near the back, arms crossed, eyes darting between details, like he was trying to reverse engineer how this version of me existed. How the sister he'd quietly written off had somehow outpaced the narrative he'd grown comfortable with. When we stepped back outside, the sun was sinking low, throwing warm light through the live oaks. The cabin glowed, not in a dramatic way, but steady, confident. Dad cleared his throat. We should have helped you, he said. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was the closest I'd ever heard. You should have believed in me, I replied. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We didn't mean to, but you did, I interrupted gently. Intent doesn't erase impact. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. But I didn't rush to comfort her. That was a habit I was breaking. I need to be clear about something, I continued. My voice was calm, steadier than I felt. If we have a relationship going forward, it can't look like it used to. Dad listened. Actually listened. No comparisons, I said. No favoritism. No assumptions about my life based on what makes you comfortable. Caleb shifted. I never meant to. I know, I said. And I meant it. But you benefited from it anyway. He looked down. I'm sorry. For real this time. I believed him. Or at least, I believed he was trying. Dad nodded. That's fair, he said. All of it. Mom hesitated like she wanted to argue, to negotiate terms. Then she stopped herself. That's fair, she repeated. They left shortly after. No dramatic hug, no promises of weekly dinners. Just space. Caleb lingered. I didn't know, he said quietly. I really thought you were stuck. I smiled, tired but honest. So did I, for a while. He nodded, then walked back to his car. When they were gone, Ethan slipped his arm around my waist. "How do you feel?" he asked. I exhaled slowly. "Tired," I said. "Relieved, sad, proud." That tracks. We sat on the porch as the last light faded, cicadas humming in the distance. The cabin behind us stood solid and quiet. No longer a project, no longer a statement, just a home. For a long time, I'd believed that success looked like being chosen, approved, validated. Turns out, success can also look like choosing yourself. I didn't know if my parents would change, if this moment would stick, if boundaries would hold. But I knew something else. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for money, not for praise, not for permission. I'd built my life without them once, and I could do it again. This time without anger, just clarity.